Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Andreas Duess, founder and CEO of Six Seed Consulting. Andreas Duess is on a mission to help food businesses thrive in a world transformed by AI, data, and shifting consumer behaviors. Andreas, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great. So thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. And just really curious, Six Seed Consulting, take us through how you got to Six Seed Consulting, what problems you saw that you wanted to solve. And just kind of take us through your story here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of the result of many things I've learned in my life. It's like when Steve Jobs said, you can only see the dots connect after you've, been on the journey for a while.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the same here. So as you can hear from my accent, most likely I was born in Germany, lived in the UK for a long time, moved to the UK when I was 18 years old and studied there and worked there, worked in London. And I worked in early tech. So worked with Google, a whole bunch of companies, including Autonomy was one of the clients, which was early AI company, an early company that managed to get meaning out of context of written documents. It was Mike Lynch, who unfortunately recently passed away in a sailing accident after he sold his company, I believe, to HP for a significant amount of money. And so did this, and then I found myself, did this for about 10 years, learned an awful lot about tech, learned an awful lot about how these things work, and I've been a massive nerd my entire life, so I was very, very happy in that particular field. And then met the girl who's now my wife, and as a result found myself, we decided to move to Canada, live in Toronto, and I accidentally founded a marketing agency that focused on food and drink because I got a freelance job, and that freelance job grew into, over the years, into 36 employees, offices in Toronto and Montreal. And I applied the things I've learned in tech to this business. I love cooking. In my university years, I worked in restaurant kitchens as a line cook to make some extra money. And I still enjoy cooking for the people I love. And so focusing on food was no great hardship for me. And so we focused on this, built a company. And then about 5 years ago, a friend of mine messaged me and she said, I want to show you something and I think you'd like it, but you can't talk about it. And that was an early large language model. And it was two things. It was absolutely awful and it was very clearly the future. And I'm old enough to remember the switch in commercial creation from film to digital. And it was terrible for the longest time until one day it wasn't anymore.
That's a great comparison. I like that.
I'm sorry, one second. I might grab some water in a second. I had a cold I'm recovering from. So let me do this again. 1 second here. I've got something to drink here. I'm old enough to remember the switch from film to digital in commercial creation. And it felt very similar. It was awful and it was awful and it was awful until one day it wasn't awful anymore. And within 6 months, everything had changed. And I could see the same thing coming. So I went home and immediately had a panic attack because, I think anybody who's ever launched a company is familiar with the 3 o'clock in the morning founder sweats where you're,
oh, geez. Yeah.
Right? You're familiar. I'll take it. Right? Where you're questioning everything you've ever done and you have massive worries about your future and how am I going to feed my family and is there any value in what I've built? Because I could see that a lot of the things, all the technology that was coming up would be able to streamline a lot of the things that we were charging our clients money for. And part of that money, the justification for that money was that it took significant people hours to achieve those things. I looked at how we could start integrating, started experimenting. And then I want to say I got lucky again because somebody made me an offer for my company. I was a 50% shareholder. Another company was interested in taking this over to expand their offering. They made a very good offer. a very fair offer, and I took it because what
Excellent.
it allowed me to do was to reset myself and look at the world as it was with no, I don't want to call this company baggage because they were great people, but with fresh eyes and from a position of, with a fresh start. And quite unexpectedly, I found myself what I call now like walking the valley of insignificance, because I went from the owner and of a company who had an element of influence in the industry, who it was easy for me to talk to people. And all of a sudden you change to somebody who basically has nothing, very little to offer, and people are suspicious that you want something from them when you call them. And so I tried to figure out by myself what was going on, what I wanted to do. And finally, I started reaching out to old friends. And one of these old friends is one of my old bosses from the UK. And I refer to him as my fairy godfather because he's been a source of never-ending support in my life. He's just been a fantastic boss, an even better mentor, and has become a very close friend. And so I called him and I said, well, I'm struggling with it. And he laughed. And he is a very successful entrepreneur who had several exits. And he says, what you're going through is perfectly normal. It's it's like this postpartum scenario. And he said, everybody who I've known who has sold a company has been going through exactly the same reaction. And so he said, give me your wife, and I'm going to talk to her. And they know each other, of course. And I hear my wife talking to him, and she says to him, well, please do something. He's getting on my nerves. He's moping about. Take the phone back on. And he says, look, it's Tuesday today. It's like, hop on a plane, come to London. We're having a dinner party on Friday. And some people I want you to meet. So I did that and went to the UK and stayed with them for a couple of weeks and met some people who were really interesting, who were into AI, who were into data. And through some help and working sessions, we decided, we started working on what problem was worth solving. And we decided that the problem we're solving with the expertise that I had built in technology and also in food and drink was, and you'll be familiar with this, 82% of all food and drink products fail in market within 2 years. It's slightly less if you're Kraft Heinz or PepsiCo.
Yeah.
And it's slightly more if you are a passion-driven entrepreneur who bets the farm on this being successful because all his friends tell him what a great idea this would be. But the average failure rate is 82%. And so the loss to the US economy alone per year is around $24 billion, which is a significant amount of money. And that translates into the loss in your and my wallet as grocery buyers of just under $200 per year. That we have to pay in extra money just to make up for the loss that's being incurred by the economy as a whole as a result. So we then started we looked at data sources that could help us solve this problem. And so we built a data lake, and we work with a number of providers and partners. And we have data coming in from retailers, so we know what people are purchasing. And it's not Nielsen data. We use data from credit card companies. We have data coming in from food delivery companies, from Instacart. Actually, they might be ringing my doorbell while we're recording this. I have an Instacart
All right.
delivery coming from Costco.
Works.
I don't ever need to go to Costco again, which is just wonderful because in Instacart, I can control my wife's spending at Costco. But when we go in person, it's just impossible to get her out of there without spending $500 on kids' clothing.
No. Oh dear.
You
want this in the show?
Oh, she knows.
Okay.
We've been together for 24 years, and she's
Excellent.
stuck with me through my idiosyncrasies, and I'm going to stick with her through hers. But, so there's data coming in from retail, so we know what people are buying.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have data coming in from food service. We get data from, the like of Uber Eats and all the other services coming in. So we know what people are buying in food service, what's on the menu, how often it's being sold, when people are buying it. We then have data coming in from people's homes. So if you're having a smart fridge in your home, chances are that we have access to the data that tells us that you bought a salad 3 weeks ago and still haven't eaten it.
Oh, geez. Okay.
But, all the ice cream miraculously has disappeared. And then all this data gets cross-referenced against the public conversation. And what this allows us to do, the big thing we're doing with this is we're closing the say-do gap, because people will tell you one thing specifically when it comes to food. Yes, I only drink organic wine, and yes, I care about fair trade coffee and all of these things. And then we know from looking at the behavior, the three main purchase drivers are affordability, availability, and does it taste good?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're running a business, if you're starting a business, or if you're bringing new products to market, if you're relying on things like social media data, and I use data, I'm going to put data in air quotes for the purpose of that conversation, then that contributes to the high failure rate, because people's self-reported preferences are more often than not performative, right? They'll tell you how they wish to be perceived by you. And so they try and tell you the right things. And so what we do, we have observed data where we actually know what people are really doing. And then we have an AI layer that sits on top of that data that allows us to interact with that data in ways that make sense, many different ways that make sense. And then we do three things with that data. We help our clients create products that people want to buy, marketing that people want to interact with, and we get them ready for investment if that's on their way.
That's excellent.
And it's been a really fascinating journey. We had great conversations. We're in a place where I feel that we are helping our clients to maintain strategic direction in what feels like a whirlpool of change. And I'm sure that's something that you must be seeing in your practice as well.
A lot of what I'm seeing from the smaller beverage industry, food industry, a little bit, is depending on the size, they may be so small that they don't even realize that's happening, or they don't even realize there's a question to be asked along those. And providing that, accessing that knowledge, they're working in a very small, probably like a 15-mile centric radius from their business or brick and mortar, if it's a coffee shop or something. So, and that's where they're pulling their information from. So that actually gets into, I was going to ask you another question, but this one kind of came up. How does your data determine, I'm sure it gives you a great demographic of what's happening. Does it, but for marketing, you need a little bit of a psychographic too. How do you get some psychographic data from that?
Yeah, we get the data by looking at human behavior. So we can pinpoint the needs of a 35-year-old high-earning tech woman who works in tech that lives living in Austin, Texas. And we can compare this to the needs of a 60-year-old man who lives in Florida. So that's an easy thing to do. And then we can dial into we can dial deep into what makes them tick, as it were. Just let me take a look if I have a little example here for you.
Yeah, because I was just wondering if a smaller business, if they're just looking just in that small demographic and then they go to e-commerce, they're probably hit with a big surprise.
Yes, they absolutely do. I mean, from when we're looking at psychographics like, values, lifestyle, interests, attitudes, that is determined from what people are buying and then how are they talking about it. So, for example, one of the problems with traditional data is that psychographics are typically performative, right? People sort of try to say the things, my values are that I'm doing the following things. My lifestyle is that I, will only deal with my children with the greatest amount. I'll never shout at them ever in my life and all that kind of stuff. So what we can do, if we see that you have a certain product that you have purchased, that you have saved a certain recipe to your, let's say, Pinterest account, and that you then purchased the ingredients for this meal, and then you talked about it on social media, and there is a picture accompanying it. Those two things come together. So the demographics and the psychographics and the deal with in the work that we do, they aren't as separated as they are traditionally. They actually start working together.
No, and you're able to pull all of that, and I'm assuming AI is helping you piece it all together.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So real quick, I want to take a step back into your business, go back to what we were talking about, can you get behind the business a little bit? You were talking about walking the valley of irrelevance. And I was going to ask, how did you use your network to assemble what was next for the problem that needed fixing? And you also mentioned that when you got invited to that dinner, you kind of sat around the table. I'm assuming that was just the beginning of this. What was written on the napkins? I'm just kind of wondering.
Well, yeah. So my fairy godfather, my ex-boss, went through the trouble of, he is an expert in AI and data and all of these things. And he put together a dinner party of people that he thought would be useful to have opinions on, helping another friend of his. And he was, the dinner party had already been planned, but he changed the focus of it after he invited me a little bit. And I'm still in a private WhatsApp group of people who were at the party and dinner party, plus some more. And it's probably one of the most valuable private groups I'm in, because everybody in there is an expert in what they do and has interesting thoughts and interesting insight. You talk about community, and you mentioned community, and you mentioned people. I'd like to think I'm a member of some friends that came together. Some of the communities I'm a member of are paid. And I would I'd say that I get 90% of my learning and of my value from those private communities. When you look at the content, the information that's out, if you want to learn about these things, if that's something that's important to you, the content that's out there, whether that's on X or, Facebook or what have you, or on LinkedIn, it's very sporadic and it's very all over the place. Whereas there are communities out there. One is, and I shouldn't mention another podcast in the podcast, but I'm sure you listen to Lenny's podcast, right?
We're not.
If you're into AI, Lenny's podcast is a good one to listen to. It's another focus on product management. He has a paid for Slack community that you get access to if you subscribe to his premium newsletter. And it is one of the most helpful communities if you want to learn. Don't go there if you're a complete beginner in AI, but if you have a foundational knowledge, I by far it is the most helpful community that I'm happen to be a member of. And I think, in the times that we're currently going through, I think it's really important to, things are changing, whether you like it or not, around that. And I think we all have two choices. And choice number one is that we are hoping this, and I see this with some people, they hope that things will go away, but they won't. So your choices are either you create direction for your business and for yourself, making the most out of the tools that all of a sudden have sprung out, or if you don't, you're creating a massive self-generated headwind for yourself. That I suspect for the businesses that choose to go that route in the next 2 or 3 years will be difficult to survive.
Interesting. And now a word from our sponsors. Are you ready to try something refreshingly different? Bluebird Hard Water is not your typical beverage. It's a clean, non-carbonated alcoholic water crafted with simple, pure ingredients, no preservatives, no added fluff, just quality you can taste without the fog, the bloat, or the regret. Whether at the beach, on the golf course, or just relaxing at home, Bluebird Hard Water is a perfect companion for your active lifestyle. Check out Bluebird Hard Water today at bluebirdhardwater.com to find out more about their story and where you can grab a can. The link is in the show notes, so don't miss it. Bluebird Hard Water, keeping it simple, clean, and refreshing every time. Protecting the look, feel, and identity of your product is crucial, and that's where James Gorley can help. As an expert intellectual property attorney at Karstens, Allen & Gorley, James knows that trademarks are essential for legally protecting your brand, name, logo, and packaging design. This ensures no one can imitate your identity or piggyback on your success. With James Gorley guiding you, you'll safeguard the goodwill you've built with your customers and avoid confusion in the marketplace. Don't leave your brand vulnerable. Work with James Gorley to protect your business today. Visit CageLaw, that's CAGlaw.com, to learn more. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. Groups out there for even like the coffee shops and a couple others that actually have those. It's just, there's a lot of, well, here, we'll go into this challenge, and of some of these small businesses can't invest because of very low, a coffee shop's doing great if it's doing 8%, for instance. And that's kind of the norm. And, a restaurant might be doing 15%. And so those numbers kind of keep them. So when you're probably serving CPG a lot more, the people coming creating products that they want to go into groceries.
Yeah, that is our core market, but we also do work with some food service companies. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely get this. I get the frustration, and I hear the frustration from smaller businesses where they say, geez, yet another thing you expect me to do. Right. Yeah. I have staffing problems. Eggs are getting more expensive, and holy crap. Right. Mm-hmm. And now you want me to pay another subscription, and you want me to learn yet another thing. And I'm pulling my hair out as it is. And I think that's absolutely understandable. Mm-hmm. But I think if, we've been taught for the last 40 years that there is a right way and a wrong way to use computers, right? So, and if you do it the wrong way, you screw it up in some way. Like my mom was terrified when we got her an iPhone that she'd break it somehow. She'd do the wrong thing, and the thing would be broken and useless, and then she'd be her fault. But that's how most people understand how their interaction with computers works. There is a right way and a wrong way, and you need to know the right way to get the best result of it. And I try to encourage people to stop thinking like this with AI and start thinking about interacting with AI as you'd interact with a highly competent, highly motivated, but also fairly clueless coworker.
Yes, I've heard it described that way too, and that's kind of what my approach is like they have a very forgetful memory. After the new task, you have them do.
Yeah, there's ways around these days where you can actually put a foundation into the conversation you're having. But when we talk to smaller businesses, and for us, for Succeed, smaller businesses, they're not our core audience. Like we say we work with companies between $10 and $100 million in sales. That's our sweet spot. Mm-hmm. But we frequently talk at events, and you have entrepreneurs coming up and they say, well, what can I do? And I say, well, what do you do? And very frequently, the vast majority of people I speak to, they use AI purely in a tactical fashion. I say, we use it to write LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts. Well, how happy? They're kind of okay, but they're not great. That's sort of what I hear. Whereas, and then I say to them, well, where does it hurt? What's your what's your biggest business challenge? And they say, without wishing to focus on eggs, they say, well, egg prices are through the roof right now, or ingredient prices are through the moon right now. And they say, well, let's take up our phones and let's put ChatGPT into voice mode and tell ChatGPT what you've just told me. And then let's listen to the feedback. And this experience, 9 times out of 10, absolutely blows people away, because it demonstrates to them that the legacy ways of interacting with computers, where you need a keyboard and a mouse, and there is a right way and there's a wrong way, advanced voice mode of Gemini or ChatGPT or what have you, are very good at listening to rambling inputs and then condensing this into the important bits, as it were, and then coming up with ideas that you may or may not have thought about. But all of a sudden, you have a conversation partner that doesn't judge you, that is really well informed about many different things.
Yes.
Right? And it allows people to ask the what if questions. And I think what if questions are really important to run a successful business. What would happen if I would use this? What would happen if, like, chocolate prices are all over the place, right? And again, let's say you have a coffee shop. The chocolate prices are up 400%. Here are the products that I'm selling. How can I reduce the chocolate without reducing the experience that my customers are paying me for? That would be a difficult question to answer for anybody if you're not a professional chef, and even then it will be difficult. A large language model will come up with 10 ideas within 5 seconds, and then you can start using these ideas as your own starting point.
Or ask them to go into further detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So hooking off of that, what's one thing a business owner could do to understand, like you said, you go out and you understand the demographics, psychographics of people's buying patterns. What could an owner do just right now to start understanding their customer base better?
So in the last 2 months, all of the large models have made insane progress in deep research. And, ChatGPT has their $200 a month, so that's an expensive solution. But Google have launched a deep research version that is, I think, $20 a month. It's their subscription included. And Perplexity, which is another AI tool that I use every day. And for those people who haven't heard about, Perplexity is an AI-powered search engine. So rather than falling back on its training data, it actually goes out online and finds relevant data with every query and then gives the links to this relevant data. They all have launched deep research offerings. Perplexity is $20 a month. Yes, it is. It is one of the most worthwhile subscription in my arsenal for sure. I just paid for the next year, and it's something I use absolutely every day. So let's say you're running a small coffee shop, and let's say the price of chocolate is something that is bugging you. There is nothing that stops you going to Perplexity saying, look, I'm running a coffee shop in Baltimore. Tell me more about the people who live here, about what's important to them. That's in addition to what I already know. And then based on this information, what could I do to reduce my input costs while still delivering a really great experience to people? And you use this as a starting point for your conversations with the AI. And I can almost guarantee you that in the information that it's delivering back, you'll find a lot of jumping off points where you go, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right. And this is one of I've read this many years ago and it always stuck with me. is the most important words in science are not "Eureka, I found it."
Mm-hmm.
The most important words in science are, "That's weird."
Yes. I've heard
Right?
this one. Yes.
Yeah. And
That's
so,
interesting. Yeah.
right. And by interacting with AIs and by sharing your challenges with an AI model,
Mhm.
in my personal experience, is interesting. Those little hooks
Mhm.
will multiply in your life. And then you can choose to follow that particular rabbit hole, and you can figure out, what about plant-based? What about this? What about that? Where are the openings? How can I be useful to people? What are they looking for? Like one of the projects that we're currently working on, we're working with a rice company to help them create a rice product specific for the needs of Ozempic patients,
Mhm.
weight loss medicine. And Ozempic patients need high fiber, high protein, high nutrient availability. Those are important things for them.
Hmm.
And so we're using a lot of the data we have access to help them create a product that fits into that particular market. And I can't even begin to tell you the amount of really moments that we had when we started looking at this.
This reminds me of the golden rice. I mean, think of how much faster we would have come to that conclusion with the golden rice. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Back, was it early 90s, I think, when they finally released that in Africa for releasing carotenes and stuff into the rice so people could get that nutrition. And what I'm assuming what you're doing is taking, fraction of the time to develop something.
We had a really funny one. This was last year. We worked with a blueberry commodity group and did a project for them. And they, blueberries have been marketed on the health benefits forever and a day. Blueberries are healthy, high in this, high in that, antioxidants, et cetera, et cetera. And then we looked at the data and we looked at the say-do gap and all this. And what we found was that the fact that blueberries are healthy was barely driving any sales. That was a given that people were familiar with, but it was not the reason they bought blueberries. The two main sales drivers for people who were buying blueberries was, number one, they taste good. And number two, and this was completely unexpected, they're pretty. So the fact that blueberries in baking have this jewel-like quality in your baked goods that reflects light and just looked like little something pretty and dark blue was a major consumption driver that nobody had ever thought about. And that allowed our client to completely rephrase their marketing and their communication.
Oh, yeah.
And, allow them to go into that particular field and just talk to people in a language that people wanted to be talked to. And so their marketing changed, the communication changed, and their interactions got far more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Two. Okay. That's really neat. I mean, yeah, being able to speak to your client's needs is so valuable.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple more questions here. And this one's kind of a fun one. This being a Harvest to Pour, business of beverages. I always got to know, what's your favorite beverage?
I stopped drinking alcohol 4 years ago, and it was basically a dry January turned into a dry February, turned into, hey, I feel great, and I haven't had a woolly head in quite a while, and so I just stopped drinking. So long story short, my favorite beverage, I think if I'd have to say one drink I want to drink for the rest of my life, is probably tea. My wife, 10 years ago, she gave me a tea sommelier course. So I'm a certified tea sommelier.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. It was 3 months of no sleep because it was an evening course. And even if you sip and spit.
Caffeine. Oh, no.
Yeah. You ingest an awful lot of tea. But so tea, I absolutely love tea. I do like I've never been much of a wine drinker. I'm really sorry. But I do love a good beer. And it's really, for me personally, really refreshing how many great beers there are on the market.
Yes.
Alcohol-free beers on the market today. I launched my own drinks company about 5 years ago when I first stopped drinking because I wanted something fun to drink for myself. And we actually launched a drink that's brewed with functional mushrooms with chaga, reishi, lion's mane. And it's flavored with botanical distillates, and the plants are all from the boreal forests. So we have sumac and we have spruce and blueberries and all kinds of berries and plant parts. Launched that. I sold the company since because I had two choices: either do it properly or don't do it at all. And I don't want to run a CPG company. I had other focuses, but I sold it to a mushroom company who have been taking it national in Canada. It's
that's cool.
Got national distribution, and it seems to be doing well.
Yeah, and I know they're coming with lots of new yeast technologies now that they can almost brew a alcohol-free beer traditionally. They don't have to go through the process of removing the alcohol anymore because the byproduct that the yeast, that they're finding these yeasts are not producing enough alcohol for it to, it pretty much cooks off from the heat they generate. And so but they're still getting an alcohol-free beer out of it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yes, it's really neat.
Our kids' godparents brought an alcohol-free sparkling wine from France for a Christmas dinner. And it was the first decent alcohol-free wine I've ever tasted in my life. It was dry. It had a little bit of it had depth to it. And so I followed up with the brand because I wanted to know how they do it. And they use specific yeast, like you said, that doesn't, ferments, but doesn't create or has very low alcohol. And they're running it through a reverse osmosis system somehow that leaves the flavor in, but takes the remainder of the alcohol out. And it was very, very clever.
It's so much new stuff's going on. It's great just to kind of stumble on these and when you talk to people. All right. And last, is there any promotions, or how would you like people to find you if they're interested in what you do in improving their customer knowledge for their product?
Find me on LinkedIn. That's a really easy way to find me. It's my last name is spelled. It's Andreas, and last name is spelled Duess. There's only one of me. I'm easy to find. My inbox is always open. So very many questions about how to implement data. We had from a business perspective, I said I launched an accidental marketing agency, and we're sort of seeing another accidental business growing within 6 Seeds right now, which is helping people figure out how they can implement AI in their businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In a meaningful way. That is more than the tactical, it's like, write me some LinkedIn posts and they're terrible, or write me some marketing posts and they're close to awful. But, if you do the things that we talked about, where you use it as a co-worker. I read something recently, which I thought was really interesting. And the guy, he said, the skills of a good manager, very, very similar to the skills of somebody who's good with AI, delegation, clear explanations, getting a sense of individual strengths and weaknesses, division of labor, clear feedback. And I read this with Ethan Mollick, I think, who is a professor at the Wharton School of Business. And I thought it was so insightful. So if you're one of the listeners of this podcast and you are, you're in a position where you hear about AI and you are perhaps intimidated by it, or just fed up with it, or you just don't know how to use this for your business, I think, looking at it this way, looking at it as something that you can throw stuff at and then sort of wait for feedback. I think that's a really good way of looking at things.
That's great. Yeah. All right, Andreas, I really want to thank you for the knowledge you've imparted beyond your business to us. I think there's been some really great gold nuggets here, and just, go back through, listen to this, and hopefully you won't be one of those 82%. We can start lowering that number and helping everybody's wallets survive what's coming. But yeah, I think you're definitely riding a unique wave of how we're going to see marketing and how we're going to see products delivered to us in the future, if not sooner.
100%.
All right. Again, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information. And connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.